originated, the man who kind of took that phrase and ran with it was our boy Pier Giorgio Frassati. Frassati the hottie, the Italian stallion. You seen him? You know him? All right, so this is Pier Giorgio Frassati, and it's my privilege this morning to get to tell you a little bit about his life, and I mean that when I say privilege. So a lot of my students know this, but I'm pretty jealous of Pier because he actually died at age 24, and so did a lot of these other really great saints, and so they've collected them, and they're called the 24 Club, so these awesome saints that died when they were 24. So last year I was 24, and I was like, this is it. I was like, I want to join it so bad. And so all year I was just like, it's gonna happen, like I want it so bad. And I told all my students, I was like, guys, I just want to like, this is my year, like I'm gonna go. They were all like, literally what? And I was like, I want to die this year. Not that I'd be in the club, but I could at least just like watch and admire the club from a distance at the same age, right? So the day before my birthday, everyone was like watching me, making sure I wasn't doing anything dumb because I was turning 25 the next day, and I was like, today's the day. And everyone was like super worried. But he died when he was 24, so he was really, really young. So I want to tell you a little bit about his life today. But first, a little story for you. I love the outdoors. I know we talked about how great Alabama was today. I don't know if you noticed that I don't have much of a southern accent at all. And I say, you guys. Anyone notice that yet? You're like, why are you doing that? Please stop. Yeah, sorry, I won't. I will not stop. Y'all. Can't do it. I'm originally from Oregon. I moved down here 3 years ago. So you guys have the beach, and it's really nice. You got that going for you. But in Oregon, everything is an adventure. 20 minutes from my house is these huge waterfalls. And I just grew up loving the outdoors. I love camping. I love anything to do with that. So here's me when I was really cool and climbed a mountain. So this is in Colorado, actually. And I climbed Mount Evans, which is what we call a 14er. And that means it's up 14,000 feet. So to give you a little perspective, you are at sea level, so you're nowhere. And then when you go to the highest point in Alabama, Mount Cheaha, anyone been there? Yes! Well, they call it a mountain, but it's not. And it's a hill. And it's at 2,000 feet. So the highest point in Alabama is 2,000 feet. Okay, just wanted to get that out of there. So I'm climbing Mount Evans, which is 14,000 feet up. All right, do we got a picture on the next one of the mountain? Nice. All right, so you start making your way. If you see down on the bottom right, that little lake, that's where we started. All right, so if any of you ever climbed a mountain, and if you count Cheaha as a mountain, I'm going to come and find you and take you down. Have any of you ever climbed an actual mountain before? Nice, a few of you, okay. Most of you haven't, though, so I want you to stand up really quick. Everyone stand up. Because I want you, you need to know what it's like to climb a mountain if you've never done it. So when you start to climb a mountain and the altitude gets higher and higher, you slowly start to die. And you lose your ability to breathe, and it makes it really difficult. So here's how we're going to simulate this. I just want you to start jogging, sprinting in place as fast as you can until I tell you to stop. Like fast. I need everyone doing this. I need everyone running in place. Keep going. Don't stop. I want to see that heart rate up. Go. Now punch yourself in the chest as hard as you can. Until you can't breathe. That is what it's like to climb a mountain. It feels like you're sprinting and someone just goes in the chest every 10 steps. You can take a seat now. That's all I wanted. From you. No joke. We start climbing this mountain, and Alabama made me a weak little punk, so I'm just like, you guys, I can't breathe. And we keep going. I'm a little winded after everyone else. Whew. But the higher you get up, when you start reaching about 9,000 feet, 10,000 feet, it literally feels like someone's just like punching you in the chest or just grabbing you by the throat and like, keep walking. That's what it's like. And so we start moving, and I am not kidding you. About every 10 steps you take, you have to stop for a water break. About every 10 steps. So you're not making it very far. Can I get the next picture up there? That's us when we were done. Or, no? Yeah, all right. So that's me standing like a warrior. We're about halfway up, and that's my friend Corinne. And that's what we looked like most of the time. Like, we would walk about 10 steps, and we were just like, why are we doing this? And we finally made it to the top. You saw a picture of me there at the top. But here's the really unfortunate thing about making it to the top of that mountain in a lot of ways. So we're like climbing up rocks. We're all disgusting. We're like, and we like graze over the top, and we see the finish line. We see the top of the mountain. Know what we also see? Hundreds of people. Like elderly people and babies, and we're like, no freaking way! We're agile youth, and we just struggled all the way up this. And we look over, and there's a road and cars parked everywhere. Everywhere. And all these people just drove to the top of the mountain, and we, no joke, like came over the top of the mountain. We're like, and all these people were like, hey, get a pic, like, I'm doing my makeup in the car, I'll be right out, right? And so we're just like, what is going on? Like aggressively mad, like, you don't even deserve this. You don't deserve this view. You get nothing of this. And we were just like super bitter, so we like went into a corner. But the crazy thing about it was, we did, the corner of the mountain. And we were just taking it in mostly because we couldn't feel our bodies, and we also knew that we had to walk back down. Don't think for 1 second that we didn't think about hopping in a car and riding back down. We were like, we made it this far. We won't be like them. And so we're just like trying to eat all our little like snacks we have left, because we've obviously eaten all of them on the way up. And there was something really interesting though about the people that had driven. Is they hopped out of their cars, they climbed the like 2-foot mountain. They were like, it's beautiful. And we were like, you have no idea. You monsters. And so they're like getting all these nice pictures, and then they just get in their cars and leave. Like, it was really quick. So they like got there, on to the next thing, on to the next part of our day. Like, it was a really nice drive. It was pretty on the way up. And we were like, we're gonna stay here for hours, right? We can't feel our bodies. But also it was beautiful. Like, we had worked our entire way up the mountain, and it was incredibly beautiful. And there's something about it like, let's stay. Let's stay for a little, because we worked for this. And we're not about to start our descent down quite yet, but let's stay, let's take this in. We just like watch car after car, people after people start filtering in, and then quickly leaving after. And there was something in us that was like, yeah, I'm glad I took the more difficult route, right? Because this meant a lot more. And I love this because this is the way that Pier Giorgio lived his life. So a little bit more about him. He was born at the beginning of the 1900s. He was born into an incredibly wealthy family. Incredibly wealthy. His family was like dumb rich. And so growing up, that was the lifestyle that he had. His father was an atheist, and his mom was just kind of a Christian by name. She didn't practice much, but she had grown up Christian. And so Pierre grew up in kind of this weird thing where he wasn't supported by his family, didn't get much faith from his family, but held it deep within him, the truth. And he knew and he loved the Lord. And so what I love about Pierre is that he was a bro's bro. He was a dude's dude. He just loved to hang out with his friends. He loved to goof off. His friends called him an explosion of joy, is how they would refer to him, an explosion of joy. Someone who just brought joy into everything. So a couple stories just to give you some perspective of the man that he was. He found it really difficult to get out of bed in the morning. Anyone else? Okay. But he knew it was really important for him to pray a rosary every day. But when he was like, I really need to pray a rosary every day, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to pray a rosary. Any of you ever were like, I'm going to wake up and do this? No, ma'am. Snooze, 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 snooze. Right? So he did this too, okay? He wasn't like some saint that was like, I'm up, I'm ready, I'm praying my rosary. He snoozed all the time. So here's what he did. He tied a rope around his arm, and he would throw that rope out the window, and when his family's servants came in the morning at 4 a.m., they would yank the rope so hard that it would yank him, throw him across the room out of bed. And he would be up. Parents, you're like, yes. That's how you do it, right? So he did this to himself, and he would have the servants pulling it to make sure that he got up. And then he would go on a hike because he loved the outdoors. It's where he found God. He loved it. And so he would hike up to a grotto in the mountains, and there he would pray a rosary, and then he would make the hike back down, and then he would go back and go to sleep again because he was so tired from waking up early. And then when his whole family woke up, he'd still be asleep. And so his parents would come bang on his door, and they'd yell at him for being super lazy. You never do anything. You always just sleep. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your life. He didn't say anything. He just kind of took it. He wasn't like, I am doing stuff, Mom. You don't even know, right? That's usually our response. And Mom's like, do your homework. I didn't do it. You didn't see me doing it, right? No, he just took it, right? He took it, and he said, you're right, like, I'll do better. And then he tried to do better. He was a huge prankster. His friends were like, he's the best at what he does. He's the best prankster. One of his friends said one morning he woke up and there was a donkey in his bed with him, and he doesn't know how he got there. And then later Pierre was like, so, find anything last night? Right? So he was just a goofy guy. And again, he used to take all of his friends out on these adventures, on climbs. He used to take them to play sports, whatever have you, and he would always pray with them when they went, whether it was a rosary or whether it was just talking with them about the Lord. That was his purpose behind doing that. So he was always integrating this in, and he lived in a really wealthy community, all right? So his friends would have been really wealthy. They would have kind of held on to their wealth as well. And again, he was a bro's bro. He loved to be at the bar with his friends. But here's what he would do. He would have a good time with his friends, and then he would challenge them to a game. And he never lost the game. So he was just super athletic. So he would play them in pool, and he would say, you know, if you win, I'll give you this amount of money. But if I win, you come to Mass with me. And he won every time. Right? Or he'd say, if you win, I'll give you this amount of money. If I win, you come to adoration with me. One of my favorite stories about that is one day, his parish priest, one night, it was late in the night, he heard a ton of stuff going on outside by the adoration chapel. So he panics and he calls the police. And so the police arrive, and it's Pier Giorgio and all of his friends who are stumbling into the adoration chapel, except Pier. And Pier Giorgio says, oh, no, like, sorry, like, I brought them. We're here together to pray. The police were like, what? It was like the whole entire bar, everyone at the bar, he had just owned them in every sport, and then they came to adoration with him, right? They had no choice. They made a bet, and so the police were like, okay, right? So this is the kind of man he did. He was always bringing his friends, and he was super, like I said last night, he was super misunderstood by his parents. They didn't understand him at all. He was just kind of this weird thing. They knew he was faithful, but they were kind of like, keep that over there. Right, keep that to yourself, whatever you want to do. But they were also really strict about things like their worst fear was that he would become a priest. Crazy, huh? That was his parents' worst fear. They saw that he loved the Lord. They saw that he went to Mass, and they were terrified that he would become a priest. And then on the flip side of that, Pier Giorgio actually fell in love with a girl that he went hiking with a lot. But she was in a different class. She wasn't quite as wealthy. And so he knew his family would disapprove. And so it kind of got to a point where he wanted to propose to her, and she was ready to be proposed to. And they loved each other, but his family wanted nothing to do with it. And he knew that it would cause division in his family. And so he broke up with her. Right? But this is the kind of man he was. Again, a lot of times when our families don't understand, or we just get really upset, right? And we're like, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do what I want. My family doesn't understand me. They wouldn't understand. I just got to go out and I got to do my own thing. But this is what I love about Pier Giorgio is he literally went to the heights in every single thing he did. And I don't mean that in some cheesy way to make this fit in, but everything he did, he was saying, I'm going to do it the best. If I'm going to love my family, I'm going to love them the best. And I'm going to work for it. I'm going to work to love them well, because it wasn't easy, because they didn't understand him. I'm going to do this well. I'm going to love my friends well. I'm going to bring them to the Lord, and I'm going to do it right. And the last thing about Pier Giorgio, everyone who knew him, except his family, surprisingly, knew his deep love for the poor. So when he was a little boy, this is kind of where it started, is some beggars came knocking on the door asking for money, and Pier Giorgio opened the door, and he knew his dad was going to come, and his dad would kick them off and be really mean to them. So he really quickly took off his shoes and put them on the young boy who was begging on his door, and then sent them away and gave them what he had with him. From a really young age, he was just like that. So he was always seen taking his shoes off and giving them to the poor, taking off his nice jacket, giving them to the poor, and also giving them his bus money. And so he would give poor people his bus money, and then he would sprint all the way home so his parents didn't realize that he had missed the bus, right? So he would pay for someone else to sit in first class, like the poor people, and he would sit in third class. And his friends always badgered him and say, "Oh, Pierre, why do you sit in third class?" And he'd say, "Because there is no fourth class. Because if there was one further back, I'd take it. But this is as far back as I'm able to go." And when he died, again, loving his family well, he contracted polio from one of the people that he was helping on the streets. So a terrible disease, it attacks your body, and after time you become paralyzed. And so he knew he contracted it, but at the same time, his grandma was dying, and so he didn't tell anyone he was sick. And so his family knew he wasn't feeling well, and he just kind of stayed up in his room so his family would tend to his grandma because he didn't want the attention to shift. And so for 3 days in his room, he suffered, and he used to go in the middle of the night because part of his body was starting to be paralyzed, and he didn't want his family to see, and he would crawl on the floor to his grandma's room to pray with her until she died. And then he would crawl back. And then his grandma passed away, and the family's attention turned to him, but it was too late, and he was in his last few hours of his life. And one of the last things he did with his paralyzed hand, he had someone help him, and he wrote down the prescription of one of the poor people that he had been helping to make sure that they got their medicine. And that's the first time ever that his parents realized what kind of man he was. And then when his funeral came, his parents opened the front door of their home, and the entire streets were lined with thousands and thousands of people who came to pay their respects. And Pierre's family had literally no idea. They opened the door for the funeral thinking it would be his friends, some close family members, some of their friends, and they found thousands of people lining the streets. And that's when they realized what their son had done. Pretty cool, right? What a man. What a true man who led by example and always to love his family well, even to death. He died at age 24. He was young. I'm young. Now I'm old. It's sad. But he lived this life oriented toward the good, always reaching the height. And this was his catchphrase because he was always active. He was always doing things. And I think a lot of times we get in our minds that these saints are people who just, it was super easy for them. It was really, really easy for them. And this is what I love about Pier Giorgio Frassati is this. It wasn't that he wasn't tempted. It wasn't that he didn't go through difficulty. It's that he did and he overcame it. And guys, that's what makes saints. Saints are not made by people where it becomes really easy for you to love the Lord. Saints are people who are tempted and still choose God. Saints are people who come across difficulty with their family or their friends or being misunderstood, and they still choose to follow after Christ. And I think Pier Giorgio could have taken many easy way outs. I think it would have been really, really easy for him to spend his money however he wanted. And I think it would have been really easy for him to disown his family who didn't understand him and just shake them off. I think it would have been really easy for him to just drink all the time with his friends at the bar. I think it would have been really, really easy for him to do these things. And I think it's really easy for us a lot of times too. Like, we have an easy way out too. We can disregard our families when they don't understand. It's the easy way out. Shake it off. Close the door and not be present. I think we can take the easy way out and we can drink with our friends because everyone's doing it. I think we can take the easy way out when we pass a homeless person and toss them $1 when we walk by. I think there's a lot of really easy way outs. And this is what we're talking when we're talking about Verso L'Alto, is climbing to the top, reaching the heights, going an extra distance, because here's what Pier Giorgio figured out. Not that it was easy, not that it was simple, but that it was worth the work. That's what makes saints, my friends. People who realize that it is worth the work to become a saint, that it is worth the work to wake up early in the morning, give thanks to God, and strive every moment of your day to love the Lord, to do things well, to not settle for mediocrity. And I know it sounds so easy and you hear it all the time. It's like, I know I need to do well. Look at people who did well. I mean, you're looking at a story and you're like, wow, it's so cool. It's so cool that he did that. It's like almost untouchable. And this is where Pier Giorgio is so incredible, is because you look at him and you're like, okay, that's doable. That's in reach for me. Like, that's possible. It's possible for me to love my family well. It's difficult, but it's possible. And it's possible for me to love my friends well. And it's possible for me to help the poor when they need it. It's in grasp. We have to be people who know what holiness is and know what it takes to get there and decide that it's worth the work, because it's not coming easy. Because saints are people who are tested and still choose God anyway. I remember I used to play soccer pretty competitively when I was younger, and one of my coaches one time in a huge game that we had, he pulled us in, and he was like, I need you guys to go to I need you to give absolutely everything you've got. I need you to give absolutely everything until that final whistle blows, and then you can just pass out on the field, and I'll come and I'll pick you up and I'll carry you off. And we were like, what? No. And he was like, no, you need to. Like, I need you to give absolutely everything. And then when that final whistle blows, you can just drop to the ground, and I'll come and I'll pick you up and I'll carry you off. Give me everything you've got. And guys, this is what we need to do in the faith as well. And this is what I want. I hope you want this so bad. I hope you want so badly to work your entire life, to work hard, to climb. And when life punches you in the chest and you can't breathe, when something terrible happens to you, when you lose someone you love, when you start to doubt who God is, when something's done to you and it feels like you lose all the air in your chest, I hope you keep climbing, because there's nothing I want more than to climb to the top and fall into the arms of a loving Father. I want to reach the end of my life tired. I want to reach the end of my life exhausted and fall into the arms of a Father, just pass out into the arms of the Father. That's the heart of the Christian. That's the heart of the saints. Are people who decided, hey, this sucks. And life is really hard, and I don't do well all the time, and I make a lot of mistakes, but it's worth the work. And I'm going to climb until I reach the end. I want to fall into the arms of a loving Father, and I want to spend eternity with him. And so that's what I want to invite you to. For Pierre, he loved being outside. He loved competition. He loved to challenge his friends, and he loved to win. He loved to be good at what he did. And so we have to start asking ourselves the question, I think it's going to look really different for every single person in this room, is, why is it worth it to you? Why is it worth the work? And if it's not, if you're thinking like, it's just not worth the work, then we gotta start even back, right? At the base of the mountain, like we did last night. Why is it going to be worth the work? Because it's going to be work. You know that. You've known that. To be a Catholic, to be Christian, it takes work. It's not easy. Why is it worth the work for you? And I'll tell you, for me, it's because it's worth the work. In the Father, I'm known and I'm loved and I'm wanted and I'm chosen. And I find that difficult to find anywhere else. And that's the one thing I want. I want to be known. I want to be wanted. I want to be chosen. I want someone to see me in all of my mess and all of my brokenness and all of my sins. And I want them to look at me and say, I choose you anyway. And I've yet to find that anywhere else but in the Father. And I think that's where Pier Giorgio is coming through too, is my friends don't understand me. My family doesn't understand me. Is the Father understands me. Like, in the Father I'm known. In the Father I'm loved. And it's worth the work, because if he loves me, I got to love him back, right? This isn't a one-way street. If the Father's going to give himself entirely to me, I got to give myself entirely back. and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be messy, and I'm not going to do it right all the time. But again, we have a loving Father who comes down off the top of the mountain to meet you where you're at, and he loves you too much to leave you there. This is what it means to be a saint, that we love the Lord. We make it really difficult a lot of times. We got to do all this stuff. I got to pray for 3 hours today. I'm on my 5th rosary. I'm going to be a saint. Pierre would look at you and be like, say what? What are you doing? Like, go climb a mountain and make sure you get to Mass, right? Love your friends well. Love your family well. We'll be a saint by loving the Lord. And not just loving him from the outside and saying like he's really nice and pretty. I mean, fall in love with the Lord. Because he loves you. He loved you first, right? We love because he first loved us and he chose us. He wants you. He chooses you. God doesn't need you. I tell my students that all the time, like, God doesn't need you. Like, what? Like, yeah, he really doesn't. God doesn't need anyone in this room. He doesn't need me, and he doesn't need you. My feelings are hurt. They shouldn't be, because God wants you, and that's a better reality than being needed. That God wants you, that you came into existence not because he needed you, but that he wanted you. This is the reality we live in. This is why we're called to be saints, is because God wants us. More than you want God, more than you want to become a saint, more than you want to be holy, God wants you. God wanted Pierre, and Pierre responded to the call, and he started climbing the mountain. And it was difficult, and his family pushed him back down, and his friends made it really, really difficult. And he continued to climb. I think we can do it. I think that's the crazy thing. That's why I teach. That's why I love to teach. That's why I love to do ministry. That's why all your youth ministers love to do ministry. It's why we have priests in the back. It's why we have priests at all. Because if we didn't think it was possible, we wouldn't be here. A lot of you are saying, yeah, you don't really know what I do. You don't really know what I do with my time. You don't know how I spend my weekends or my nights. If you had any idea, you'd say probably, I'm kind of out of reach. There's not one person in this room, there's not one person in this world that is out of reach of the Father. And that's why we're here. That's why your youth ministers do what they do. It's why priests do what they do, because we believe that it's possible to be a saint. All it takes is that we got to start climbing the mountain. And that we're willing to put in the work even when it gets difficult. And I hope some of these stories of Pierre inspire you, Frassati, inspire you, because he just did what he loved to do really well. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take us finding what we love to do, those God-given talents, and then doing them incredibly well. Because there will be nothing better than at the end of our lives being really, 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 really freaking tired. And the Father saying, come here, I got you. I'm right here. Why is it worth the work for you?